Hello, my name is Nick Majerison and this is Esoteria. Today's show we're going to be talking about the subject of UFOs and extraterrestrials. We're joined by a guy who first came to my attention when I witnessed footage of him being chased down a high street by a black helicopter. Here's that footage. An unmarked helicopter which is pursuing our guest Tony Topping. Tony, thanks for joining us on the show.
Hi, nice to be here.
What on earth was happening there? I mean, you're coming back from the pub, right? And you're being pursued by a helicopter.
What was happening there? That's a question many people have asked me, but I think on reflection I was walking back from the pub, as you say, and I had this feeling of being watched. Oddly enough, before leaving the pub, there was a couple of guys in the pub who appeared to be observing me, but the friend I was with didn't actually, we didn't pay much attention to it, and he said, oh, they look as if they're watching you. I said, no, they're not, it's okay. But wandered off, wandered down the street, and wandered down the, past what's the place called the local chemical factory, which is known as Yorkshire Chemicals. And I'm just minding my own business, and then all of a sudden, above the rooftops, this helicopter appears. And the shocking thing about it is you didn't even hear it coming, and it just appeared. And there it was hovering. And I thought, what the hell's going on here? Now, I had my camcorder on me because I'd been showing some footage to somebody. So, next minute I know, the helicopter then kind of like flies round to a road junction and hovers low in the road. While that's going on, I'm getting my camera out to film it. And there's cars blaring their horns at it because it's at the height of a street lamp. So you just picture that, hovering above the road at the height of a street lamp, and it's kind of like side on towards me. It then climbs, and there's fishermen on the local canal bank who stand up in amazement looking at what it's doing. It climbs, turns and comes towards me, and it's at that point where you see it coming towards me is the point where I start filming. It's just a shame I didn't get it on the road junction because it would have looked very dramatic if I had done. Comes alongside me, and as you can see, it's bristling with camera gear. It's got a dome at the front of it, it's got a tripod on top of it, and that all began because I'd started filming unidentified flying objects over my home. There's some previous footage on my website of a helicopter incident before that one, of an actual helicopter coming over and circling the garden. When we played back that footage, we discovered that not only was the helicopter circling the garden, and it's possibly the same helicopter, but there was an unidentified flying object that made a pass over the top of it, and they didn't see it. So you've got that going on before the actual footage that you see there of the helicopter. Because at this point, you're a UFO researcher, aren't you? Yeah, well, I was having strange experiences in London, began in 1996, I've had them all my life, but in 1996 I was having extremely strange experiences in London with these objects. They were appearing, I was walking down Ladbroke Grove in a place called Parade Street in Paddington, and this ball of light would literally, it would fly across the road, it would go like that, expand itself and then close. And I'm thinking, what the hell's all that about? And I remember actually looking and thinking, that's going to crash into a block of flats. And the rest of the street was oblivious to what was happening. And then I moved to Orpington. I lived in a place called St Mary Cray, and I had some very bizarre goings on there with these objects coming over at very high speed. This was in 1996, and then I came back to Selby in 1996 and had a series of bizarre incidents in October of that year over my backyard. Years ahead now, I have more of a grip over what it's about, but at that time, in 1999, I then put up a website, and somebody who has an army background said to me that if you're putting up a website, of that nature, of UFOs, be aware of obviously what may come and knock at your door, or look in the woodwork, you know, come out of the woodwork and have a look at what you're doing.
And do you think that's what attracted them towards
that's what attracts. So anybody who probably claims contact will be probably briefly monitored or looked at. And when I say contact, I mean claims communication with unidentified flying objects may be looked at. But I was really looked at, and as a result of that I started, as I say, that's the helicopter incident, one of many incidents over my 12-year history from over 12 years of dealing with the UFO objects and all that kind of thing. I mean, I've actually been chased down the street by a UFO object, I mean, which was the most bizarre experience. You can't put it into words. I can't even begin to describe. Unfortunately, I didn't have any form of camera on me. That was a few years ago. And this is all part of a story, of a jigsaw that I don't quite understand.
Well, you've gathered some incredible footage, and we don't have time to see all of it, but I mean, some of the stuff that you've gathered is genuinely unbelievable.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, we have a clip now that we're going to play that we'll have a little look at, and I want your analysis of this, but first of all, we'll show it to you. Here's one of the clips. Now here we're looking during the day at a UFO, and this is in broad daylight, right?
It's in broad daylight, yeah.
And what exactly is this that we're looking at?
Well, what that is, that's been taken near the new railway bridge on Selby Canal, and what that object is doing is it's literally flying from left to right, and it's just appeared out of thin air. Sometimes with a camera, when you're filming them, if they're at a peculiar angle, it may look like a UFO, but is in fact an aircraft. So there's people who have said, well, it's a speck of light, it's this, it's that. It isn't. It is what it is. It is an unidentified flying object, and it has appeared, and you know, there it was. And it's one of my favourite pieces of film footage.
So what's your explanation for these things? Are we talking here about something that's supernatural, or are we talking about something that uses conventional technology that we just don't understand?
I think a combination of the two. There are supernatural forces involved in some of the things that we do see, in terms of the paranormal. But there is a thing where there are people, not so much people, I think that's the wrong phrase, what's the word I'm looking for? I think it's right in what you said, that conventional technology that is very advanced is being used, and I think that governments and the military are monitoring that in order to gain an edge, a technological advantage. I think since my years of experience in dealing with all this, that behind the scenes there is a war, a very bizarre war going on behind the scenes, where it's denial, but behind the scenes it's acquisition of technology, understanding what they're up to, even perhaps a secretive liaison with them could be a possibility.
So what has the response from the powers that be, from the authorities, been? When I mean, have you shown them any of this footage? Have you reported these sightings?
I think I'd have to be careful what I say on that, as to what the response of the authorities are, because sometimes you get so overwhelmed, Nick, that to come out with something would be very confusing or incoherent. But I think there are security issues around what is going on. I think that the military possibly have a bit of a tough call on with it, because don't forget, these things are appearing near aircraft. There has been incidences where UFOs have clipped some of these aircraft. There has incidences in the 1950s in America where US fighter planes were engaging objects, and so I think there's a very tricky call as to what they are and what they're doing and why they're here. You know.
So how do you feel talking about this kind of thing? I mean, do you feel your personal safety is at risk? I mean, what do you...
I feel that all the time I'm having to just try and understand more every day about what is happening. I am involved in something that I do not understand. I'll be the first to admit it, and I think that's the thing. The whole bit where I went wrong was pretending that I did understand, when I don't understand what's going on. It sounds surreal, surreal, but I feel that I've got to sit back sometimes and just listen and watch, rather than try and give an objective opinion as to what is going on. Because believe me, Nick, it can get very strange and very surreal.
Well, one of the things that I admire about you as a researcher is that you don't, you're not coming out with absolute answers, and you're open to possibilities.
I wouldn't even call myself a researcher, Nick. I'm a bloke who's got himself involved in something that he doesn't understand. I wouldn't even label myself as a researcher or a contactee or whatever. I'm a man who has an incredible story to tell and is involved in something quite incredible.
So why you? Why the picture?
Well, you know, I don't know. In answer to that question, I think it's best to admit that I don't know. I have a suspicion that it could be that some people within the population have a rare genetic coding which is of interest to certain people behind these objects, and that there could be some scientific liaison going on as it develops, as the liaison behind the objects develops, because not only do I film them, but there's kind of like some kind of liaison going on. It's a bit complex to explain, but there's more to the human mind than what you think, and it is like a radio telescope or even a giant receiver. You know, there's people who would discredit that, but the military, the US military, for example, they funded billions into the remote viewing programs, as did the Russians, even the Ministry of Defence.
Now let me just, remote viewing, that's where you sit in a room and visualise.
Correct, yeah, it's where you sit in a room, and there's kind of like different techniques of remote viewing. There's CRV, TRV, all this kind of thing. Coordinate remote viewing is the one where you subliminally interrogate a target and gain data from it. In fact, a guy called Pat Price, who worked for the US Army remote viewing program, was so accurate that the Russians, I think, there's a rumour that the Russians had him bopped off because he was that accurate with what he was doing. They were remote viewing missile silos and locations of missile silos and all this kind of thing. There was a guy called Joseph McMonigal, he was the #1 remote viewer in the US Army, and you'll often see some of these Dr. Greer's groups, SETI I think they're called, you will often see them saying, we vector in UFOs using remote viewing and that sort of thing. Real life, however, when you're involved with it in real life, you don't need to vector them in. They'll be there if they want to be there. If they want to speak to you, they will do.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about contact.
Yeah.
Have you had any contact? Have they spoken to you?
You get a situation occurring where you have where the mind is capable of hearing something that is beyond our reality, and it's not heard inside your head, as it were. It's heard outside of yourself. So it's as if the air around you is going still, that there's a silence.
And you've had this happen to you?
Yeah, there's like a silence around you. We could be talking now, the birds could be twittering, the dogs could be barking, but you won't hear it. I cite an incident that happened in January in 2001 at the River Ouse at Selby, where that actually happened. And what happened there, I was stood, I tell this to all the radio stations and TV things that I've done, where I was stood on the riverbank, and I was just watching this tornado jet. Is on routine training out of an RAF base with another tornado jet. This tornado jet flies over the top of me, and he literally blinks his lights at me, on, off, and he was signalling to me. He was probably signalling to me because he saw me near the riverbank and wondered if I was okay. That's my thinking behind it. But then the air went still. Even though these jets were roaring, the air goes still. You get this bizarre static feeling in the air, and you think there's something coming. You just know, you just sense that there's something going to happen. And I felt compelled to go up to the local farmer's field. I felt compelled to walk up the riverbank and go into this farmer's field. And all of a sudden there was this blinding flash of light within the farmer's field. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And the two jets saw it. And one jet, the far jet, he hit his afterburners and gave pursuit to whatever, gave pursuit to something. Next minute I know, you've got neck and neck flying over the local town. One UFO, one jet, and they're flying like that, both together. And it was absolutely staggering. And the pilots, one day I would like to meet them, but I know that probably because of the security laws they're under, they won't be able to probably speak about it. But the pilots and myself will never forget that incident on that night. And that tornado jet was flying with that UFO object. Why? I don't know. That's frustrating.
I mean, this is such strange stuff, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
And for me personally, I mean, I've never seen a UFO. I've never had any experience like this. But the majority of our judicial system is laid down upon testimony.
You were saying,
and your testimony that you're giving there, I mean, you've no reason, as far as I'm aware, to lie about any of this stuff.
No, I've no investment in lying at all. I think that there'll come a time where I might get a bit stronger and start uploading, pumping up the volume as to what's been going on a bit more. But at the moment, I'm very restrained with what I say and very careful about what I say, because I think that, you know, to come out with a load of stuff that may be not objective opinion or wrong is not of benefit to people. So until I can get a better perspective on what's going on and a better observation, you know, I'm just a bit slightly guarded on what I say.
Okay, well, hopefully we'll get some of that out of you later on in the show. Up next, we're going to be talking to a guy, Dennis Richards, who claims that UFOs or entities cured his cancer It's an unbelievable story, and he'll be joining us next here on Esoteria.
If I told you that I know a guy that I trust that had cancer removed by aliens, what would you say?
I think you're a bit misled. Maybe you'd lost your faith in the NHS.
No, I would think that either it happened naturally or it happened by the use of a doctor, and he was just trying to make himself more interesting.
Well, that entirely is about whether aliens exist or not in the first place. If they do, no, I don't know, because I don't know whether they do exist, so I wouldn't know whether they would be able to cure cancer. But there's a lot of weird things out there where people do get cured for no apparent reason. Maybe it is aliens. Good on you, aliens!
Welcome to Esoteria. My name is Nick Majerison, and with us we have the guy that those people were talking about, Dennis Richards. Dennis, thanks for joining us. You've got an unbelievable story to tell. I don't even know where we start. I guess we start with the day that you were diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah, I was diagnosed with testicular cancer with secondaries in the lungs, lymph glands, abdomen and aorta. I was given about 15% chance of surviving and started chemotherapy, and I was in for a week, and after the first week's chemotherapy I came home on the Saturday night and had a dream that this spaceship came down, landed on my chest, and these little men came running down the ladder, started taking tumours away.
So you had a dream that little men came down and started taking your tumours away?
Yeah, they were on a spaceship, they kept running up and down the ladder.
How big was the spaceship?
It's about chest size, about 14, 15 inches.
Okay. So it landed on your chest, and out came... What did the aliens look like?
They were just tiny little men, but I can just remember seeing the tumours going up and down the ladder. These little men running up backwards and forwards like little ants, just marching up and down with the tumours. Woke up the next door.
And at that point, did you believe in UFOs and aliens?
I'm half believer, a bit of a sceptic. But I woke up the next morning and told my partner, we just laughed about it. And then the following Saturday I was rushed into hospital because I couldn't breathe, and they said, we're going to put you on a drip. It's the equivalent of domestics going through your system, antibiotics, it'll cure anything. 5 days, you'll be fine. On the Wednesday they sent me over for a scan. On the Wednesday night they came back and said, look, very sorry, there's nothing else we can do for you. The antibiotics aren't working. I thought, hell, this is it. I'm done for. Even got to the stage where my partner was going to get a priest and we were going to get married. Woke up the next day, I was fine. And then the scan results came back that it says the most remarkable improvement, all the metastases from the lungs had disappeared. For no reason.
Did you mention the aliens that were extracting the tumours at the time to the doctors?
I did, and they just laughed and they said, it's hallucinations because of the medication you're on. They said, you know,
psychotoxic medication, right?
Yeah, psychotoxic drugs. They just said it's just part of the treatment, don't worry about it. Aliens don't take cancer away.
Right.
So 2 weeks later I was back in hospital, had another week's chemotherapy. Came out on the Saturday night and there's these little leprechauns came down, started taking the tumours away. Leprechauns?
Now we'll describe them. What are they?
Little men, little in green outfits taking tumours away, off into the wardrobe. And I thought, this is like really bizarre. I thought, I just hope this is true. Anyway, went back to the hospital, told them about the dreams, and they just laughed and said, look, you know, aliens don't take away cancer, you know, you're seriously ill, don't worry about it. More tests, they come back and said, we can't understand it. A load more tumours have disappeared.
And at this point, are you telling friends and family what's happening?
Oh, yeah, they just...
And what do they think?
They just think I'm a bit eccentric and...
But then again, you're ill, so
it's the
I guess
medication.
Yeah.
You know, you're told you've got less than 6 months to live. It's a bit of a jolt to your life. Anyway, went through and had another chemotherapy. And the fourth chemotherapy, the red and green gremlins came down. The green gremlins were taking tumours away, the red ones were putting them back.
Now, gremlins, again, what do these things look like?
They were just like little men in red and green suits, and they were fighting on my chest, and it was like having prickly heat or sunburn, and I could feel them pulling things out of me, and it really hurt my chest. And it got so bad in the end, I couldn't stand the pain. I just went, look, go away, I can't take any more. And they went up into the top corner of the bedroom, and they were fighting up there. The red ones wanted to bring them back, and the green ones were fighting. And I came downstairs and told Mandy next morning, and we just laughed. Went back to hospital, more x-rays and scans, and they came back and said, look, all the tumours had disappeared apart from the big one between your lungs. But, you know, we haven't started treating that. Once we start treating that, we've got to try and shrink it. That'll be followed by a 6-month break, followed by 6 months of radiotherapy to shrink it. Then you'll have to have an operation, and we'll take the tumour out and a third of your lungs, because it's actually in my lungs. And if you still survive after that, you'll be in for a bone marrow transplant, and you'll be in isolation for 6 months. So they're looking at a 3-year process. Anyway, I had the 4th chemotherapy, came out on the Saturday night, and these little creatures like rabbits with long fluffy tails came down, started nibbling away at the last tumour. And I just sat there or lay in bed looking at it, and I thought, this is unbelievable. Came down the next morning and said to my partner, you know, the cancer's gone.
So this time you witnessed a rabbit?
Yeah, with a long fluff, like a Persian cat tail on it. And I said, the last tumour's gone. I said, I'm clear. And she says, yeah, you'll be all right, yeah, you know. Just keep taking medication.
Hoping that it's true, though, at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, of
I
course.
mean, it's bizarre. You know, it's unreal. Even though I've seen it, you think you're losing the plot. Anyway, went back into hospital, had some more tests. The doctor come in and said, don't know why, but you're completely clear. All the tumours are gone.
And you must have said, it's the aliens.
I said, it's aliens. They just laughed. And they wouldn't say anything. They wouldn't commit themselves, because they can't. But I still had another 2 chemotherapies after that, because they said you can get microdots of cancer that don't show up on the scans that can still grow into tumours. So I carried on and had the last 2 chemos after that. So I was on 7 months altogether. And I came out, didn't have any dreams for about 2 or 3 years.
So at that point, are you free of the cancer?
I was completely clear. Doctors didn't know why.
Cured to all intents and purposes by entities or aliens. Is it possible, do you think that they could have been hallucinations? I mean, do you accept that?
It could have been absolutely anything. To be honest, I don't care. I'm still here. There was people in hospital with me who weren't as poorly as me, who aren't here. They've been dead 15, 16 years. You know, I've had extra 15 or 16 years life. I'm here for a reason. What that reason is, I don't know. I've got a job to do somewhere along the line.
And then you have another experience, and this is later on, once you've been recovered for a while. Do you want to tell us about that? Yeah, I found another lump on my other testicle, and I booked in to see the doctor in the hospital, and I had a dream I was back on a spaceship, and it was like an inverted golf ball where you got the dimples on the inside, and it was like a fluorescent tube came over me, and it was like looking at a glass of water, pretty much like the jug on there, with the archetypal alien body, and they just said, don't worry, we're checking you over, everything will be okay. Now, what do you mean by archetypal alien body? Because there's debate over what
like
exactly
the
that would
walnut
mean.
type eyes and the head, funny shaped head, but it was like looking at a glass of water, and they didn't speak as such. It was like just thoughts I could hear, and they said, don't tell anybody because they'll think you're mad, but you're going to be okay, we're keeping an eye on you. And then the next minute I thought I'd fell out of bed, and I just woke up and I thought, this is bizarre. Went to the hospital a few days later.
Were you on medication at that point?
Just painkillers.
Right.
And the surgeon who did the operation came in, and he looked at me and he said, what are you doing here? I said, oh, I've got another lump. He says, no, he said, but you're supposed to be dead. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, you're really, really ill. I said, yeah, I know, but I said, why didn't you tell me at the time? He said, well, because your dad had just died, we didn't think you could cope with it. He said, but he says, how are you still here? He said, I can't understand it. He said, it has spread to your lungs really bad. And I explained things to him, and he just didn't comment. Anyway, it went on, and about 3 or 4 months later, I pulled a muscle in my chest really bad. And had it for 3 or 4 months, and no painkillers would touch it. And then I had a dream one night, I was on the spaceship, and I actually sat opposite somebody talking to you. And they gave me a piece of chocolate cake, and he sat there and he says, how's things going? And we just talking.
Give you a piece of chocolate cake?
Chocolate cake. Really nice chocolate cake.
OK.
And I said, look, I've got this really bad pain here. I says, can you do anything? He says, yeah, put a spray on, no problem. And I thought, oh, I wish this had happened in real life, because this pain is... It was like having a broken rib. I couldn't turn over in bed, I couldn't breathe, I couldn't move. And put the spray on, it went in instantly. Anyway, there's another cake there, split donut with cream, chocolate and jam on the top. And I said, oh, can I take that with me? He says, no, that's for the next person. Off you go. So I woke up and I was in bed, and I thought, oh, I wish that dream would come true. This pain's so bad, it's been there for months. And eventually I went to turn over, and the pain had gone. Just like that. And I'd had it for 3 or 4 months, and the doctors just said rest and all the rest of it. Pain had just disappeared. No explanation whatsoever. But we went down the town next day, and normally don't go down the town, seen these cakes in the cake shop. Went in there, and I was telling the woman the story, and she says, but we've only done these cakes today. It's for Christmas Eve. It's a one-off special. We've never done them before. And that's what I'm telling you. I've seen those cakes in my dreams last night. And since then, I've had a couple of strange dreams where aliens have been involved, but nothing as intense.
So what do you... I mean, we're going to get onto this in the next half. We'll talk some more about your experience, but have you any reason or inkling why you? I mean, why are these aliens pursuing you?
I don't know. But all I got was the sense that they were very caring and wanted to help and didn't come across as being aggressive. They were quite passive, but they wanted to help. And why?
That's a positive experience. I mean, you've been cured from cancer. I mean, obviously you were on medication at the same time. It could be the case that we're talking about hallucinations here, but I, at the same time, think that even if it is hallucinations, that doesn't invalidate the experience. I still think it's an unbelievable story to tell, isn't it?
But even if it was hallucinations, at the end of the day, the cancer was there. They said it'd be a 3-year process to get rid of it, and after 4 months it wasn't there. So something's happened in those 4 months that didn't happen to other people, and that's why I'm still here today.
So at the end of this experience, are you a believer in UFOs? Do you believe in all this kind of stuff? Because like I say, you're a guy who contacted the radio show that I do. You rang us, you told us your story, but you're not a UFO researcher. You're not, you've no vested interest in this. This is just a story, something's happened to you.
It's something that I think needs going into the public domain. Why hasn't somebody come along and said, can we do a few tests? Can we have some blood to try and see if there's something in your blood that might be different about you, or that there's a reason, whether it's scientific or whatever, that the cancer went. The cancer was there, and then as quick as it came, it disappeared. Now, a scientist will say it would have happened anyway. But if it would have happened anyway, why do you have chemotherapy and all, and why does everybody have, why do so many people die? There's got to be a reason why it went.
It's an unbelievable story. We'll get Tony Topping's analysis of that story next here on Esoteria, and also we'll have a conversation about some of the other stuff that Dennis has told me and some of the other things that Tony Topping has told us. It's Esoteria, and this is a show, not a programme.
Aliens don't exist, do they? No, not much they don't. But I find that word aliens rather offensive. I'm sure they do. Because in actual fact, they're light beings, sentient beings, in humanoid form, that do appear here, are helping us now to try and get out of this mess. They're trying to wake us up. But you can lead an horse to water, but you can't make it drink. There are beings here from what you would call in the Bible demons, evil entities that are cloned, or are doing evil abductions. They're taking the fetuses away from women, cutting them out. They're taking semen samples from men. They're impregnating other women that are abducting. And also, what they call demons in the Bible are actually, demons are soulless. They've got no soul. And what they're doing is trying to take your soul. Have you heard of the saying of the evil eye? Well, if you look at abduction cases, when them big black eyes, which seem to be shields hiding their real identity of their irises, which are reptilian, snake-type eyes, and they can just look into your very conscience, your soul, and they take that away, and they feed off it. Now, these demons are on a regular basis doing this, but they usually appear in grey form, small, 3.5 foot, 4 foot tall. We've got the long willowy ones who seem to be the bosses of them. And we've got the evil ones at the top, which we call Luciferian dragon type entities. They seem to be the bosses. Now this is all mixed in with the occult. People who are really deep into the occult, and those members at the top of the pyramid in the secret societies are the ones that are pulling the strings. They're the ones that call out these demons because, do you know something? They're soulless. They're soulless. They just order killings at the drop of a hat. Wars. Because they've got no empathy with humans. They've sold their soul. Most of them people that sit in Parliament have sold their soul. They knew that it was a load of crap that Blair Boy was coming out with a 45 minute war.
Do you believe in extraterrestrials?
I believe there's definitely something out there, but like little green men or whatever, I don't know. I mean, there's got to be something else out there a long way away, but what they are, what they look like, I don't know.
Not in like a cartoon sense, but I think there's probably like other life forms there.
I think that somewhere other life exists, whether it's, you know, intelligent enough to build a spaceship and come and visit, or whether they'd want to do that even if they were. I don't know, but I do believe that there is other life out there somewhere.
Welcome to Esoteria. My name is Nick Majerus, and this is a show, not a programme. Our intent is to show you what's going on rather than program you to a particular point of view. Joining us today, we have Tony Topping, the UFO researcher, who was telling his unbelievable story before. And also we have Dennis Richards, who was telling his story about how entities appear to have cured his cancer. Now, chaps, we've got a strange situation on our hands here because, as you'll have noticed from the people that we talk to, some people believe in the idea that extraterrestrials exist and that they're you know, out there somewhere. But the real question, I think, for most people to answer is, are these extraterrestrials in contact with this planet? Tony, I think your answer would be yes. But,
yes, definitely.
Dennis, do you think?
I think they have been for a long time, and it's just covered up because people would panic. And the first thing people would do if a spaceship landed somewhere is try and shoot it. Shoot first, ask questions later. And, you know, it's just the way the human beings are.
Now, your story before, we were talking about being cured by entities. Could have been hallucinations, but it's certainly an incredible story. Tony, I wonder what your take on what Dennis told us before the break is.
Yeah, I think that something has happened to you, where you have interacted with something that is unknown. And I think that, you know, people at first glance, when you're talking about a cream cake, and you were saying little goblins and leprechauns, you know, at first glance they're going to think you're mad. They're probably at first glance, but that's just it. You see, if you look at it that way, they're going to miss the bigger picture, which is there's a possibility you are here. You've got the medical evidence to prove what happened to you, but above all, there's an interesting concept which is called screen memory, whereby what's presented to you, what you're saying, may not be what's happened. And what I'm very interested in is what really went on. So you probably have had interaction, but the data presented to you in your mind may not be what's happened to you. And the other thing as well is perhaps we've got to be big enough to say that perhaps you were helped and you were genuinely cured by people who have more advanced medical technology than ourselves. And if so, what could we learn from that? And I think these are the conclusions I draw, Nick, from his interaction.
So in your research that you've done, I mean, largely are these extraterrestrials, are they friendly, or are they, I mean, in Dennis's case, clearly they're friendly.
Yeah, clearly they are. In Dennis's case, they're friendly. In my case, they're a combination of both. They either are unfriendly or they're not. You're dealing with the unknown. In my experiences, you're dealing with unknown elements, which at times have not been friendly. But the majority of the time, 75%, 90% of the time, they are friendly. There's friendly interaction going on. It's that 10% that's a little bit worrying, Nick, I would suggest.
And you're suggesting as well that Dennis is remembering an incident incorrectly. So there's some form of hallucination.
Something has happened to him, and it's been presented to him in a gentle way into his mind. Because believe me, Nick, when you see these things, these so-called what people call aliens or whatever, it could be mentally quite mind-blowing. It's mentally stressful. So there's accounts. Various people have accounts of where they've presented themselves in such a way that would be gentle on the mind. There is a researcher called Daryl Sims. He's classed as an alien. He classes himself as an alien hunter. He would suggest that these screen memories are placed in people for a sinister purpose. But I think what the point proves here is that he's been cured. And how long did he have to live? Did you say 3 years?
Less than 6 months.
Less than 6 months, and he's cured. And that itself must be testimony to something going on. And what perhaps would be good would be to get hypnosis, maybe go beyond the screen memories, but I think from a medical point of view, to maybe find out if your experiences continue, what sort of technology they were using.
Now, potentially, would that not be dangerous, though? Because if you're talking about his body protecting him from a memory...
Yes, true indeed.
Well, I mean,
I think that's true, Nick. Yes, I think,
Would you submit to that if someone were to contact us?
I'd be quite happy, because I would love to know what actually happened. And it was such a pleasant experience when it did happen.
There are pleasant experiences, Nick. Sorry, so do carry on now.
To be given a second life, which it is. I've been given a second life, and I'm here for a purpose. What that purpose is, I don't know. I'm here to do a job. I don't know what that job is at the moment, but I've been kept here for a reason. And I'm not a religious person. I don't believe in God, but something happened that's kept me alive. And I can't explain what it is, but I would love to know more, because common sense dictates to me. If somebody told me the story, I'd laugh at them. But because it's happened to me, I've experienced it. I can't turn around and say it hasn't happened, because it has. You know, I went through the chemo, I've had the needles, I've had the upset, the being ill, and I've got forms at home that says from different doctors I've got less than 6 months to live. I've seen doctors after 2 years after I was healed, and I've gone back to see the surgeon, and he turned around and said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I've got another lump." He says, "Yeah, but you're supposed to be dead." And like for doctors to turn around and be quite blunt about it, and they offered me no explanation.
So in the event that, supposing we were to give Dennis some hypnosis and reveal his experience, do you think, Tony, it's possible that he could end up realising that it wasn't a positive thing that happened to him, and that perhaps he had become involved in something that you know, in the cold light of day,
yes, there is a possibility.
So there's a risk there.
Yes, very perceptive, Nick. I think there could be a risk, but obviously it's that obsessive quest to know more that can possibly lead people down a dark path. Sometimes some things in this subject are just best left alone for what they are. Yeah, I do agree with you. There's a possibility. It's what's termed an abreaction, I think, in hypnosis, when somebody has got a traumatic memory, and what happens is the mind creates a term called an amnesic barrier against the stressful event. And
people get it with post-traumatic shock.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah.
So if something terrible happens, you see, this is the thing for me. I've never had a UFO experience. I've never seen an alien or anything that I can't explain, and I almost don't want to. You know, I'd rather not see any of these things, because I've got enough problems dealing with reality as it is. You know what I mean? We live in a weird world. The idea that, you know, I could see a UFO or an alien, I think it might freak me out a little bit too much.
Yeah, but earlier this year, there was a tribe in the jungle that was shown shooting a bow and arrow at an aeroplane. Yeah. Because this tribe has only been discovered, they're thousands of years old, they've never seen an aeroplane. Now, how do you think that what do you think is going through that tribe's mind? They're seeing something flying over, they think it's a god. That's right. There's no explanation for them. But I think...
Human beings aren't used to seeing things which we consider to be more evolved than us, are we? I mean, we aren't used to it. We're used to looking down, being the king of the jungle. Imagine if that crown were taken by UFOs and we end up having to look up and look into something that's far more advanced than us. And that's the world that you guys both live in. I mean, that would be a little bit too much for my reality, you know?
I know a lot of people in the Disclosure Project, the military witnesses that came forward in that project, Disclosure Project. There was nearly 400 military and intelligence witnesses and people who work for American corporations who were deeply, some of the generals, admirals, people involved in the commercial sector were aware of this reality, were deeply shocked about what went on. They're deeply shocked, you know. It's not easy. The subject is not easy.
And the Disclosure Project, for people who don't know, is of course the attempt to bring the truth out with hundreds of credible witnesses.
Yeah, that was it. Yes,
all stepping forward and all saying that there is something happening.
Yeah,
here.
indeed so.
Do you think it's the case that we're talking about multiple phenomena, and we're talking about things that are happening, different alien races, you know, rather than one concentrated visitation?
There is a guy called, well, there's a guy, you look him up on the internet, a guy called Sergeant Clifford Stone, who worked for his unit was attached to a US Army UFO recovery unit. They indicated at that time that they called them the Heinz 57, in that it was documented there was 57 varieties of alien species visiting this planet. But not only that, I read research in the 1950s where it really was hot with US Air Force were engaging UFOs and all this kind of thing in the 50s. They even had a guide in circulation for airmen as to what some of these UFOs looked like. It was in circulation as a standard memo. In the 1950s there were a lot of standard memos going around saying if pilots see a UFO, do this, do that. They didn't want to say that they existed, but it was standardly accepted that that is what was going on at the time.
So if there is a cover-up going on, I mean, the obvious question is why? I mean, the Disclosure Project, they believe it's something to do with the oil economy. Obviously, flying saucers don't use oil, and that would dramatically change the way the world works. I mean, what's your take on the cover-up, Tony?
Well, I mean, that could take an hour's programme up in itself, to be quite frank.
Show. Is it a show?
It's not a programme. It's a show, not a programme. So, I think that as Dr. Stephen Greer said, a lot of people slag him off, and they slag him off because he claims he's been in contact with UFOs and that we should be ambassadors to these aliens and all this kind of thing. There's bits of him I agree with and bits of him I don't agree, but what I do agree with him, when he did the Disclosure Project, he had an incident with a television network. They refused to broadcast a UFO documentary because the people responsible for the cover-up had intervened and stopped the documentary from going on air.
Now, Dr. Stephen Greer is the guy who runs the Disclosure Project.
But Stephen Greer would indicate that there is a cabal of individuals dated back from the Nazi Reich, you know, there's something called Operation Paperclip, that have installed this cover-up upon the population. It's a petroleum banking kind of elite cabal that has possibly installed this dictatorship where we're using fossil fuels when in fact free energy was developed in the 50s and the 40s, but we're still holding back and putting fuel in our petrol in our cars, and that, he reckons, is responsible for the cover-up. And I would agree with that. I would say that there is a definite cover-up, and it is that kind of element that is responsible for the cover-up, and we need to change. We definitely need to change in that area in terms of energy delivery systems and what we're using at the moment in our cars and vehicles. And that's the bit that is being covered up. That really is being covered up at the moment.
Well, that's, I mean, that's something we've spoken about on this show before, free energy. And once you start looking into free energy, it gets quite scary exactly how far the rabbit hole goes. This is Esoteria. Thanks for joining us. This has been a show, not a programme. The intent is to show you what's happening, and you can make your own mind up about it. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back again next week. And now I think it's time for some Alice D.
I'm Alice D, and I force you to think. Ooh, what day is it? I keep thinking it's yesterday, but actually, it's today. I think I lost a day somewhere. Yeah, that's right. Maybe I was taken by aliens into a spacecraft where they did weird sex experiments on me. Once they'd had their wicked way, they probably then decided to make a bit of small talk. You know, ask me how we do things on our planet. Oh, the aliens are advanced, but there's one thing that they've never managed to grasp. That's the power of the human spirit. I reckon when I was chatting to them, I probably fashioned out a guitar out of old rusty bits of flying saucer. Then I probably showed them aliens how we Earthlings like to party! Rock and roll, baby, yeah! Let's get crazy, you green-skinned mothers, woohoo! Power chords on Pluto, jamming on Jupiter. The Martian mashup has begun. They probably loved every minute of it. Those crazy aliens. Then, Once I'd really won their respect with the power of my music. They probably said, "We had you Earthlings all wrong, Eris D. With your music you have showed us the way and taught us the power of rock. We now see what it is to be human. You've taught us how to live. Now we'd like to help you." Then I probably said, "Thanks, Thugwort, King of the Skies. There is just one thing that you could do for me. Now that I've shown you the secrets of guitar-based tunery, I'd like you to show me something." "What's that, Your Highness?" "Why, Thugwort, the way home, of course. You guys have been fun, but I miss my homeland." "As you wish, Your Highness. Rock on!" Then I probably woke up. In my bed, unsure it was all just a dream. Then I probably looked under my bed and saw the guitar that I made on that alien planet far, far away. I reckon I chuckled to myself and looked at it fondly as I remembered my incredible adventures. Maybe I even saw Thugwort and his friends waving in the reflection of its beautifully polished surface. That'd be ace. Apart from the sex bit, of course. I'm Alice. Alice D. And I love you.
You almost the same way that these ancient texts did.
We have to be very careful about how we interpret what we read, especially the Bible. And I'll tell you why. When I research these secret societies, and I research the Bible, and by the way, I'm a Christian, so if you're a Christian, don't think I'm knocking your religion. I'm not. I'm just telling you what I found. I have found that at the very heart and core of all these secret societies lurks the Kabbalah. The Kabbalah is the ancient Jewish mysticism. It is a method of encoding information through a system of mathematics and numbers. It is some of the most ancient knowledge that man has ever possessed and has been kept secret and given only to those who have proven themselves worthy through the process of initiation. Nobody knows where it comes from. I can tell you this, it was there long before the Jews came along. The Jews just took it and preserved it, and they passed it down, and it's used by everybody. Because it's at the heart and core of the secret knowledge, the metaphysics, the real science that none of us know anything about. These people that belong to the secret societies never dared to write down in any language what they knew, what it was that they were guarding, because then someone could steal it and then the secret would be out. So they devised secret systems of encoding the secrets of the ages, the knowledge, the hidden knowledge, the occult. Now, occult doesn't mean evil. It doesn't mean the devil. It doesn't mean Satan. Occult means hidden. It means hidden. That's all it means. So they took this knowledge and they made it occult through a system of encoding, encryption, one of which is mathematics, numbers. Another is architecture. Everybody wonder, why do they have a fraternal organization called the Freemasons? Aren't those the guys that build walls? You bet they do. But every wall they build contains the secrets that have been kept and maintained throughout the ages, and it's encoded in the architecture and in the measurements of the buildings and in the mathematical formulas used to derive the geometry, the shape, the length and breadth and height of rooms. It's all encoded there.